Okay, guys, hello. Thank you so much. Well, I'll give everybody a second to come in. We can stay late. Okay, thank you all for your patience. I'm going to give everybody a moment to come in. Thank goodness I have a partner who is tech savvy, who lives with me, and who can help with everything. So I think we're pretty good to go. I guess I'll just dive right back into the questions. That was so funny. I can't believe that happened. And worst case scenario, everybody who's here right now gets lots of Q&A time this evening. But we're going to post everything back in the Facebook group and stuff like that. I'm not exactly sure what happened, to be honest. I think we were recording stuff from a different microphone before and I didn't update it properly or something, but we figured it out, so it's good. So thank you guys all for coming back and finding me on here. I'm really happy you guys are all here. I'm just going to dive right back into the questions right now. Can I post the link to the other chat? Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I think it might have to be like a shareable link. I'm not exactly sure, but please do. I'm off that now. I had to be off that to get in here. But please do. Thank you so much. I'm gonna laugh about this for like half an hour tonight. That I just talked to like the computer screen for like 5 minutes, didn't notice. Hi. Okay. Awesome. Okay, so I'm gonna dive right into the questions right now. So I'll finish up what Marlene was saying too, because I know that was the first question. So basically, what Marlene was talking about has a lot to do with, wow, there's a lot of people back on here. I'm glad everybody found it so quickly. Thank you all for being here. So what Marlene was talking about earlier is she was discussing how we can get really triggered in the moment. And so a couple things naturally happen and we can speed up this process. If you guys notice in the chat, she said, in her question, she said, I was able to put a word to my behavior for the first time. And what basically happens in our lives as people is as we all go through, and this is such an important topic, as we all go through the system of classical conditioning, of punishment reward, right? Where we get punished for doing things wrong, rewarded for doing things right. We learn in our entire upbringing and all of our years of life, we learn to become extremely focused on the external world. So we learn to be focused on like what's going on outside of us, making judgments about the world, changing our behavior to fit in, to get approval, to avoid the punishment, to get the reward. And as a result of this, our mind as a coping mechanism to actually deal with the trauma of classical conditioning, the trauma of coming into a world where we're dependent on our caregivers and then being terrified of abandonment, being terrified of not getting their love, of not getting connection from them. Basically, what ends up happening is we start to recondition ourselves to be constantly making judgments and adapting our behavior our whole lives. And as a byproduct of that whole system and process, we become identified with thinking. We become addicted to our thoughts. And there's a whole bunch of work by Dr. Joe Dispenza on this, where he literally talks about the neurochemistry of addiction to our own thinking. And it's not necessarily our actual thoughts, but it's that thoughts produce emotional responses, and emotions are made up of neurochemical reactions that we can become quite addicted to. So for example, the neurochemistry of stress is like cortisol and dopamine. And dopamine is a very addictive neurochemical. So I'm saying all of this to basically shortcut to the output, which is essentially the fact that when we go through life, we become addicted to thinking, feeling, and reacting in a very quick way of navigating our world. And it becomes a coping mechanism. And what we learn not to do, and what we essentially forget how to do, is to observe ourselves in our internal reality. So as we're doing this work, and this is why I'm such a huge supporter and advocate for meditation, as we're doing this work, part of what we want to be able to do and to work on is literally this idea of being able to observe ourselves as things are happening, observe why we're feeling bad. Instead of going inwards to change our behaviors, to get the approval, to get the reward, actually go inwards and go, why am I feeling this way? What do I need to feel better? What am I triggered by right now, and how can I resolve it? And basically, we're breaking this deeply, deeply ingrained behavioral response. It's essentially automatic because it's been with us for so long, of going, something happens that I don't like, and I go outward. to get the approval, to get the reward, to address my behavior, instead of going inward to observe. And so one of the most powerful things we can do when we're really trying to practice being able to work on our triggers and break through them is to practice being in the seat of the observer, to be able to actually observe our thinking. And in a lot of like spiritual places, like in Buddhism and Hinduism and things like this, a very common term is called disidentification. Like this idea that we don't attach to thought and just believe everything we think, because all the things that we are believing are essentially an output of old conditioned programs. That's not what Hinduism says or Buddhism or things like this, but this is like the scientific perspective behind this, right? Why people practice observing their thinking in meditation, why we don't attach to thoughts, why we practice healthy non-attachment. Well, the reasons for this underneath all of this is the fact that when we observe instead of react, we learn to be responsive in a healthy way using our conscious mind. And most importantly, when we are in the seat of the observer, what we actually are in is we are in our conscious minds observing our addictive subconscious thought patterns. So if let's just give a really clear example, and I hope I'm not going into this for too long, but it's just such an important topic. Let's pretend I have this wound. Okay, I'll give you guys this example. So I used to have a really big core wound around helplessness, right? And I used to, like, let's say the webinar situation. That was like 12 years ago would have, like, I wouldn't have been able to handle it as a person. I would have been like, I'm helpless. Oh my goodness. Because, I don't know what's going on. And you're on the spot. And now, like, I can laugh about it as it's happening and be like, oh, we're going to figure something out. But that came with, you don't attach to the thoughts in the moment. Like, the thoughts are coming and the thoughts can say all these things. And I've reprogrammed a very, very large portion of them. But let's say like 12 years ago, maybe my thinking would have been like, everybody's going to be mad. Everybody's going to, I'm going to be attacked. I'm going to be in trouble. I'm going to be punished. I can't do anything. I have no control. I'm not going to be able to figure this out. And it's so easy those thoughts would come. Let's pretend this is 12 years ago for me as a human. And when those thoughts would come, I would be like, you attach them, you buy in, you emotionally invest in them as if that's the reality. But, like, is that the reality, or are those old stories based on childhood experiences that I had? If I didn't do things correctly, or if something wasn't happening and I was used to that. So now I have these automatic thoughts that spit out that aren't actually an effective representation of what I'm actually going through or experiencing, or what people are going to do on the other end of this. So fast forward 12 years, something like this happens, and I can tell my partner, who so graciously helped me just fix everything, was way more stressed out about this than me. I could see him, like, really stressing there for a moment. So what we have to learn to practice is not just believing our own thoughts. There's an amazing quote by a wonderful teacher named Byron Katie, and she says, all the suffering in the world comes because of a result of people believing their own thoughts. And some of our thoughts are true, and many of our thoughts are very important. But when we buy in and we attach to them, thoughts will then naturally produce emotional responses. Then we get engulfed in our emotional responses to things, and then we can't behave from a conscious perspective. So we want to be able to fall behind our thinking, observe it, question these stories. And it's a practice. And we're breaking this ancient pattern that we've had our whole lives that's been ingrained in us to just go, something upset me, somebody didn't call me back, or somebody said something rude, or whatever it might be that's triggering me. And I just go into, like, all the stories come up and the floodgates open. The floodgates might open, but we have to observe instead of buy in. And that's, like, the first part. And so meditation retrains our brain to start observing, using our conscious mind to observe all these natural functioning subconscious thought patterns that are just running on autopilot, that are thinking for us, our 60 to 70,000 thoughts per day, as opposed to us consciously thinking. And so this is such a hugely important practice. And And then as we do belief reprogramming and we don't have all this stored emotion because we don't believe these stories about ourselves anymore. I am helpless. I am not good enough. I am out of control, whatever it might be. When we don't believe those stories, they also don't have as much emotional output, right? Like a thought could come up, but it's a thought. It's not a belief about the self. And so it doesn't have the same degree of power over us and our behavior and the way we feel. So there's a few things that we have to practice regularly, and we're essentially deprogramming this entire paradigm or landscape of our own subconscious minds that says, for example, whatever core belief is, all the stored emotion attached to it goes away as we do a lot of the belief reprogramming because we don't have this as a literal story about ourselves any longer. And then on top of that, we get into a position where if something happens, we have all the bandwidth to deal with it. It's like, oh, something comes up, we go, like, I just went through this little mishap and it's like, I have full conscious capacity to be like, okay, what do we need to do? We need to email these people. We need to check in here. And you can think, but when we're in fight or flight and we're reactive instead of responsive, then what happens instead is that we just get triggered and we can't think outside of all the emotion that's engulfing us. And for anybody who's ever been triggered and who has been there before, I know I lived a lot of my early life in that space almost permanently. You can't make clear decisions. And so as we practice reprogramming, as we practice meditation, as we practice witnessing the sensations in our body and going inwards, what am I feeling? Why am I feeling it? What do I need? And most importantly, by far, as we practice the how to self-soothe tool, the thought and emotional processing tool that I talk about all the time in all the courses, those are your steps. If you can master that process in real time, you won't buy into your stories anymore. You're retraining your brain to be in a state of reflection instead of reaction. And so we go, oh, what do I feel? I feel nervousness. Okay, what is this communicating to me? Why am I feeling this way? What story am I telling myself? Is it true? What's some evidence that it's not true? And what do I need to feel better? And we can wrap that process and go through those thoughts, in 15 seconds and feel really clear and conscious and aligned instead of feeling in a panic or in a deep state of triggering. So just such an important topic. And a big part of what we're going to focus on, and we have it in our first week of Jan, is like just the how to self-soothe tool again, because it was so popular, that one webinar, and we did all live examples. We're just going to rinse and repeat that. And for anybody who's new and who hasn't seen that yet, it is so important to watch that webinar in the webinar library, the how to self-soothe. It was like a week and a half ago, and we're going to keep doing that until it's a norm for everybody inside of the school. It's mastered, because you have that, you have how to self-soothe, you have how to meet your needs, you have how to question your thoughts and stories, how to reprogram your mind through doing it. It's all those major 4 things encompassed into one 5-step tool, or 6-step tool if you count the strategies. So that is that. So now I'm going to go into the questions. And apologies for anybody who had their questions in a certain order or came early. But we will have many, many more webinars. We do 4 every single week. We do 2 live Q&As out of those 4. So stay tuned. And we have 2 this Saturday. So feel free to submit your questions there, or in Ask Thais or anything like that. And we don't have many mishaps like this. Maybe once every 6 months, we have an interesting little thing like this. But I appreciate everybody's patience because we do a lot of these. So stuff is probably going to go wrong from time to time. Okay, so Princess Khan, how are you this evening? So Princess Khan, and I'm so glad so many of you guys found your way back in here. I'm so happy to see that. And thank you for everybody who helped, by the way, get other people in here by reposting the link and all those different things. So Princess Khan says, I saw a video of my ex with his potential new interest after some autopilot snooping. I love how you said autopilot snooping. I hear, and when you say that, I recognize what I was doing. I realized it was a subconscious thing. And you are aware from a conscious perspective of what's happening. So it caused a lot of wounds to pop up, but particularly my exclusion wound. How do I deal with this wound when I really am excluded now from my ex's life and he's excluded from mine? Excellent. So when we're looking at wounds, right, what makes them so painful is that the more we invest in them in the moment, the more we have this automatic buy-in. The thing that's so painful about that automatic buy-in is we go, I am an excluded person. We really take that wound to who we are as part of our identity. Why? Because it's programmed into us. So to our own subconscious mind, it is a part of our identity. And now it's being confirmed by our external reality, which is what makes it so painful. So we go from two perspectives, okay? We always try to look at the specific situation first to see what is in there, right? And then we look at the external situation as a whole second. So the entirety of the wound as a whole second. So we go, okay. And you might find minimal here, right? Okay, I'm excluded by him. Is it true? And I 100% know that I'm totally excluded. And you might find a little bit of stuff that can help just a little bit to release some of that investment in that story of yourself. So you might be able to say, well, I really can't know that I'm not included in his thinking, that he doesn't ever think about me, that he doesn't compare this new love interest to me, that he doesn't reach out to me on social media from time to time, or that he doesn't look at my pic. Like, I can't know any of that. So am I completely excluded, like just gone from his life? Maybe not completely. But then what we really focus in on here is, where am I included in life in general? So where am I including myself? Where am I including my own thoughts and feelings and beliefs? Where, like, things like, I'm here working on him. I'm here, it was a big relationship. I'm here showing up for myself to do the work. I'm asking questions. I'm getting support. Where else do I have inclusion in my life? In the PDS school community, with certain friends and family members you can name. And the more specific you get, the more you elicit an emotional response. And this is what we were talking about in like the thought reprogramming and equilibrating tool. And this is what's so valuable, is when we can go, okay, where am I included? Okay, by my family. Okay, at Christmas or over the holidays or whatever I might celebrate. Whatever it is, or the last weekend when I just spent time with family. And you get really specific. You go, the way my mother looked at me during the holidays and cared, or the way my father like went out of his way to make this huge effort and to, think of me in this way and this way. And we get really specific and we feel things, because when we get specific, we're actually using our conscious mind to speak to our subconscious mind. And I say this fairly often, but I'm going to keep repeating it. So it's like second nature to you guys. The reason we have to get specific is that specific memory. What my father did when he went out of his way. We see that thing. Maybe he shoveled the snow off your car, whatever it might be. I guess I'm in Canada. Maybe not everybody has that experience, but like, let's just say in that example, you think of like your dad going out in the cold and doing that. And what's happening when you think of it is you see an image in your mind, and every memory we have is colored with emotion. And so our subconscious mind doesn't speak English, doesn't speak our first language, it doesn't speak any language at all. It speaks literally through emotion and imagery. So when we see that vision of somebody looking at us in a loving way, somebody shoveling the snow off your car, you see that, you feel something about it, and now your subconscious mind has a buy-in. So that's really what we want to be focusing on. And you can do that from the perspective, Princess Khan, of going, okay, where may I be included in his thinking in some way? Where may I be included in his life in some way? Maybe his family still asks about me, whatever it might be. There's a few things in there. That's not going to be the meat of how you equilibrate. The meat of how you equilibrate is, where do I have inclusion in my life? Where am I an included person as a whole, right? So if we replace that idea with like not good enough, where am I not good enough? In the situation where, let's pretend I went to give a speech and I forgot my lines, okay, well, I'm good enough that I carried on, or that I still showed up, or that I, whatever it might be, right? So we go context specific, but the really painful thing isn't that not good enough from the mistake we made. We're humans, we make mistakes. The real pain, or technically suffering, is that we go, because I made the mistake giving the speech, I'm a not good enough human. My character, who I am, my core is not good enough. When we identify with this like concept about ourselves, and that's a heavy, heavy weight to carry. And so the real meat of equilibration becomes, well, how am I good enough in general in life? Where am I, or even if we're stuck on that belief, where am I becoming better every day? Where am I working on myself? And then that's the real meat of the equilibration. And so that's the exact same, just to give you that other analogy, format that you're going to apply to these steps here. Included him in the specific context in whatever forms you can find. Yeah, a little bit of equilibration, but really it's that you're not this you know, alone, totally excluded human being from the rest of the world. And that's, you're trying to get rid of the story about yourself that's being brought up by that event, right? So I hope that makes a lot of sense. And it's such an important topic. So great question. Hello, Mondi. How are you? Thank you so much. Good morning. It's so funny. It's early for you in the morning there, I know. And it's like 8 p.m. here in the evening. I'm so happy you're here. Thank you for being here. And Mercedes, thank you so much for always posting such wonderful comments all over YouTube. I see them all the time. Thank you. And B, thank you so much for posting the link in the other chat. That was so helpful for me. And for getting everybody here, helpful to many people. So thank you. Okay, let's see this. Hi, Kylie, how are you? So Kylie says, I have a thing where I see myself in a reflection and see myself as a man. It only happens occasionally, but it is distressing. I wonder what you mean by that. So you see yourself as a man, like in the mirror, like in the, and really, you know, I want to tell you right now, I feel like I have like a hair stuck to my eye there. Okay. I want to tell you right now, it won't ever be what you see that causes you the pain or suffering. It will only be the meaning you give to it. Like if let's pretend I walk by a mirror and I think I see myself as a man, like, I probably would be like, whoa, I haven't slept enough. Like I've been working too much. I need more sleep. Like, you know, and so it's the individual meaning we have. What you ask yourself is, when that happens to me, what do I make that mean? Do I make that mean that that's who I think I am at the core, that I'm having like an identity issue, that I have things to acknowledge, you know, like what do I make it mean? And then I have to question those things to see if they're actually true for me, or if I'm just giving meaning based on feeling afraid of something that's a fear that's been stored in me since childhood around some specific event. Like we have to get really clear. Is this real? Is there something for me to look at? Or is it just this like interpretation I gave because in childhood I saw somebody go through something like this and it made me confused and then I projected onto myself. So with every single person, and I know I say this quite a bit, but it's just so important. What I want you guys to all know is that it's not the circumstances that cause the pain or the suffering. Right? It's the meaning we give to the circumstances that cause the suffering, the stories we tell about it. And that is what our individual suffering is made up of. And when we can get really skilled at going, why am I upset right now? What meaning am I giving to it? And you'll start to see the patterns that you're always giving the meaning, I am not good enough, or I am not lovable, or I am alone. And you'll see that there's 2, 3, maybe 4, themes of stories you're always telling, and they'll really be linked back to a core wound. And then we know really what to hone in on and do the work on reprogramming and all these different things. So hopefully that makes a lot of sense. And hello, Monica. Hello, Preston. I'm so happy you guys are here. And Crystal. And thank you to whoever else posted the link. I really appreciate that. And SM, welcome. I'm so glad that you're here. Thank you. And welcome to your first webinar. You came at an exciting time where we had an adventure. Hello, Natalie and RF. Okay, so Crystal says, Happy New Year, Thais. I am officially 12 days into no contact. Made it through and no looking back. Congratulations. I feel great, gaining a lot of perspective and making grief an acquaintance. Beautiful. You know what I hear and I'm always going to tell you guys what I hear from your, when I hear from your, comments is, I was laughing at Jermaine's comment that I saw underneath. I hear what you said is, I'm accepting my emotions as they come. I'm making peace with myself and how I feel around the situation. I'm not trying to repress or avoid or go back to the person as a means of avoiding my feelings. I'm actually accepting the experience right now, which is beautiful. I feel much stronger after breaking up with my FADA, and it just shows me how much all of the work inside the school has really made a difference. That's so beautiful. I was already meeting my own needs and learning how to experience and work with my emotions. So post-breakup has felt less like the terrifying kiss of death my abandonment fears used to make it seem. That is powerful. Would take a lot from my ex to convince me to revisit things again because I'm doing so much work on my broken heart and feel so much stronger and hopeful. Thank you times infinity. That is so beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. And thank you for like, I think when we have people, and we have a lot of new people coming in all the time, and there's a big need for a lot of this work. I'm realizing more than I originally thought when we put together the school, at least in this short period of time, because it's grown so fast. And just, I think it's so hopeful for people. It just is so happy to think people come in and they see these beautiful inspiration stories. Because Crystal, I remember like you were having big AA stuff going on and big fears of abandonment and all these different things. And I just want to acknowledge you because you didn't stick around and put up with stuff that wasn't fair to you. You made the decision to say, I'm not getting my needs met. And it was like sort of this mutual understanding and breakup, but you could have probably tried to make it work or manipulate the situation into, putting your needs on the back burner, but keeping the person in your life, right? Maybe not manipulate the situation, but, organize it in a way that you don't lose the person and have to face abandonment. But ultimately, who gets shortchanged in that? Only you hurt yourself. And so the fact that you were able to like draw that line in the sand when you did, and take those steps to heal and to say, no, I deserve more. I promise you, like only better, healthier things are around the corner for you. And I wouldn't worry about it happening like immediately and finding this person tomorrow or anything like that. It's really healthy to take like a moment and process and take time with yourself. But, I see you. I see the amazing work that you're doing and how hard you're, investing into it. And you're so deserving of all the peace you're feeling around the situation and all the feels of the experience as well, right? So just really, really beautiful stuff. So thank you for sharing. Okay, so Rochelle says, I finished the post-traumatic growth course around the trauma I shared in the last webinar about my friend betraying me and calling me weird after I went through sexual abuse, and I feel so much lighter now. You were absolutely right when you said that I could be resenting her lack of understanding the situation. Although I had already said this in the holiday Zoom call with you, I just wanted to thank you and the other PDS members for being so supportive when I shared this story. Oh, I feel like you guys are going to make me emotional here in a second. When I shared the story and I was tearing up as I read all the supportive comments in the chat section, I realized that what I really needed in the situation was for people to understand me and support me, as I was already very self-critical during that time and thought I was overreacting and being weak. Since I was going through depression, I noticed after doing the work that I get very triggered whenever I feel someone is invalidating my experience and feelings, as that happened a lot in childhood, and I experience a lot of shame when it happens. And I want you to notice one other thing here. So first of all, like beautiful. The post-traumatic growth course is like that course. It's a very intensive course. It's like very advanced. Congratulations for being able to do that on such an intense subject as well. And just how you must have felt so betrayed during that time and everything you went through. It was so nice to see you on the Zoom call, by the way. And I just want to acknowledge you for like all that hard work, everything that you're doing there, and just showing up incredibly well. So it's amazing. And I'm so glad that you're feeling like all that lightness. And I really just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart to our whole community, because like I can offer one experience through sharing and facilitating information and support and caring, because I mean, I'm sure you guys can feel I'm like probably a little too caring sometimes about stuff, but like it's also a totally different experience for somebody in a community to share something and to just receive all this support and all this kindness and all this. And I just want you guys to know that like everybody who does that, and I see you all doing this with each other all the time, like you're all making this huge impact on people's lives. Like it's really touching people and really affecting people. And there's so much of it. And I'm not sure if everybody even understands like how powerful it is what they're doing when they show up in this way in our community. So just, I know I say thank you all the time, but thank you so much for everybody who's doing this for one another. And I want you to see one thing in here, Rochelle, which is that I get very triggered whenever I feel someone is invalidating my experience and feelings. And you're going to say, because that happened a lot in childhood. Excellent recognition. And then I also want you to recognize that that's also your shadow trait, right? Because like we get imprinted with that. That's how people relate to us. And so we internalize it. And then that's how we learn to relate to ourselves. So then I bet if you look back on your history too, not now, because you're not doing it now, you're doing like the exact opposite, but there's probably also this pattern in format of you invalidating your own experience and feelings constantly as a recovering DA. And so, that's also really important to recognize. And that's obviously why it's going to be so triggering for people, because it's hitting home in such a powerful way. So your question is, although it might sound strange from a recovering DA, it's so funny, I didn't read that part yet. I wanted to know, what can I do in the future whenever I am faced with a situation where someone invalidates my feelings? What can I say to that person and handle the shame within me? Excellent. Number one, these are your steps, okay? Step one, you see it happen. What emotion do you experience? What does it feel like? Step one, familiarize yourself. So what do I tend to feel? Because you'll notice it's a specific emotion or set of emotions. So some people will feel rage and anger. Some people will feel shame and sadness. Some people will feel anxiety and distress. Some people will feel loneliness when that happens. So what is your specific emotions? Number one, familiarize yourself. We familiarize ourselves because that's why we write out our BTEAs in the emotional mastery course, because now we know ahead of time what's going on. We're letting our conscious mind understand our subconscious mind. We're actually getting them to speak the same language. Like one speaks emotion and images, the other speaks actual language. And now we're connecting the dots here. Okay. So number one, familiarize yourself. Number two, validate your own emotions. Okay. So you're undoing internally what's happening to you externally. So somebody's invalidating my emotions. Okay, I'm going to validate my emotions. How is this making me feel? And you want to own that. Like, yeah, I should feel the way I feel because this is a wound for me. Like, I should feel this way. And then you ask yourself, what do I need to feel relief right now? And that would be step three. And step four would be, do I need to communicate this, or how can I best communicate this right now? And it can be a boundary. It can be by just saying, hey, this is unacceptable, and just communicating like very directly about, nope, this is inappropriate. Stop doing that. Like whatever it might be, but follow those 4 steps and you'll get the answers coming to you. So excellent question. And that's you breaking some really deep, big patterns. And yes, SM, you post questions on here. Absolutely. Okay, so let me see where I am. What's next up here? Jermaine saying silence is not golden. It's so funny. So what happened, how I found out is my partner, my very secure, who was once a DA partner, who we've been together for years now, years and years, knocked on the door, and I was like, I'm in a webinar. He knows I'm in a webinar. And he's like, there's no sound. And one of our team members called him and was like, he says no sound on the webinar. So thank you to our team members who are watching or who are notified or whatever it might be. So funny. Anyways, okay. So Lindsay says, hi, I'm hoping for some insight. Amazing, Lindsay. Post your question down below and I will answer it and share any insight I have. And hello, Thelma and Mia. How are you guys this evening? So Isha, hi Isha, how are you? So Isha says, I've made the decision to end things with my DA friends with benefits since I feel my needs have shifted and he can't meet them. We have an age gap and he knows my family, so it's a complex situation. However, I do think he deserves to know how I feel about him, since both of us just do the who cares less dance. That's a good video topic. Because it's very common, right? It's like, really, the who cares less dance is who can be less vulnerable because we're both terrified dance, right? I want to be vulnerable, even though I know I'll be turned down, but I'm too ready. Since that clear answer from him will give me all that I need to heal and move forward with my life. Okay, I just want to acknowledge this for a moment. We're just going to do a breakdown of this. There are going to be a lot of times in life as you guys are growing through relationships and understanding relationship dynamics, where you're going to look at things exactly like Isha is right now. And you're going to go, what do I need? I need to express how I feel. And I'm probably not going to get the answer I'm looking for, but it's actually more important for me to honor my own needs than to worry about the approval or the output from the other person. And that's a tremendous sign of healing. So I just want you guys to see that, right? And I want you to recognize what you're doing, Isha, which is amazing. You're going, I know my needs. I know they've shifted and this person can't meet them. I'm clear about that. I also want to be vulnerable because I don't care, not because I'm trying to get some kind of outcome from the outside in, but because from the inside out, that feels like the right thing I need to do next. And that's just like, these are huge signs of growth. So excellent. And then you said, however, I'm in a gray area right now since we haven't spoken in 3 weeks. This is fairly normal for us, but this isn't what I want anymore, which is a part of the reason I've decided to end things. I do want to see him in person and do this so I can have a genuine conversation. I was the last one to reach out to have a discussion about what happened when we met, so I don't want to reach out again. I was really hoping I'd hear from him before the new year so I can have a fresh start, but right now I have to wait. How can I stop going crazy until I hear from him? I want him to reach out so that we have this talk and I can end things and move on instead of waiting for the next shoe to drop. Okay, so here is what I see. The reason you feel like you're going crazy is because the mind ruminates when we have really profound needs and we aren't getting them met. Rumination is a subconscious strategy for your subconscious mind to try to get the attention of your conscious mind so it can help you to meet a need. And so we think and think and think about things. And whenever we're in rumination, it's always, okay, there must be some kind of big need we have that's unmet. Let's define what that need is. Let's create a strategy to get it met, and you'll find the rumination goes away. So with that being said, my honest opinion, Isha, is like, reach out. If you're clear on what you want and why you're doing it, and you're not worrying about the approval from him or anything like that, I know you guys have a bit of a history. It sounds like there's an even longer history than I originally knew because it's like a family friend or something of that sort. And so I would go, I'm going to reach out tomorrow and I'm going to just say, hey, I would really love to have a chat with you before the new year. Let me know when you have some time. Looking forward to it. Hope you're well. And just give yourself the opportunity to like get that case closed, because who cares about his approval at this point? If you're clear about your needs, clear that he's not meeting them, what matters is not that you're in that dance anymore. It's that you're honoring yourself completely. So just wanted to say, excellent job. Very well done. Very excited about this for you. And those are the big steps to be taking 100%. Okay. So great work. Hello, Monica. How are you this evening? Jake, how are you? I saw Jake. Thank you, Jake, as well. I saw you in the other chat saying, I forget what you said in there, but you reminded me of something like, to post in the Facebook group as well. I was like, yes, my partner was helping me out. I'm like, post in the Facebook group as we're kind of figuring out what's happening. So thank you for that. Okay, so Liz, how are you this evening? So Liz says, hi, Thais. I'm so grateful for you and your wonderful school. Thank you so much. Thank you. I really just want to express appreciation as well when you guys are like saying, hello, how are you? Thank you. All these things. I know you only have like 200 characters. So it's so sweet when you guys do that. Thank you so much. My question is, how much time to give DA or DA leaning FA in the dating phase, DA leaning FA, okay, during this unprecedented and scary time? 1 out of 4. Okay, good stuff. Let me see. 2. Here we go. I'm FA leaning anxious who grew up with a bipolar parent. Yeah, very common for FA leaning. Very common output is to then be a fearful avoidant leaning anxious in that situation. I feel like the DA leaning FA I met during the pandemic is a good guy, but has some relationship traumas. Let's see here. He has moved very slowly since we met 6 months ago, which I actually like, but he has slowed to more recently over the holiday time. And as the world has become crazier in recent weeks, yeah. He recently also expressed that he's feeling depressed. How much extra time is reasonable to expect a FADA to need in the dating phase during this crazy time? Okay, so excellent questions. Sorry to hear that you had that tough upbringing with a parent. That will definitely make you very hypervigilant. It will also make you a little bit attracted, most likely, to a certain degree, to more DA men. It kind of can split off in 2 ways. You can be really attracted to the FAs because it's the subconscious comfort zone of love, or you can be really attracted to DAs because if you felt really unsafe during childhood, seeing some of the things you saw with a bipolar parent, then sometimes part of what FAs are attracted to in DAs is just that they are pretty like grounded. They're not up and down emotionally. They might be a little bit like that from time to time internally, but you hardly see that externally. So they feel safe and rooted and grounded and consistent. And And a lot of those things are appealing if we come from any kind of trauma in childhood where we were on a roller coaster. Part of our subconscious mind says, oh, okay, I'm like kind of safe here. The reason I brought that up is because I heard that's very common to feel. And I heard that in your part saying he moves slowly, which I actually liked. And I heard, I like that it feels safe and slow and not like in control, but like grounded, clear, like these sorts of things. So maybe not clear, because I think what you're wanting is clarity, but all the rest of the things. So in the dating phase, here is what you want to do. It's been about 6 months. What I'm trying to understand, is I think what you're trying to say here is the rite of passage you want is the exclusivity clause, right? It's like you want to move out of the dating phase into the honeymoon phase, which the rite of passage to move from one phase to the other is literally about having a conversation about exclusivity in the future. So here's what I want to say. At the end of the day, it's not about what the person is going through. We can honor what the person is going through. We can be there for what the person is going through. But if we use that to repress or excuse our own needs away, we just got into dysfunctional territory. So what relationships will be about doing, and we'll use this example is a specific situation. They're about going, he's in this space. Let me ask him what his needs are. It's been 6 months. It's a perfectly fine time to have a conversation about this. He's going through a hard time. Let me ask what his needs are, and let me also state what mine are. So let me say, for example, hey, I know you're depressed. I know this is a crazy time. We have been seeing each other for 6 months, and a commitment to like being exclusive of one another is really important to me. I want to feel like there's an investment in the relationship. I'm putting my time in. I know that you probably have a lot on your plate, so this doesn't have to be like a pressuring conversation. Not a lot has to change in our relationship. I just want to know that there's the potential to move along a more long-term trajectory, and that we want the same things at some point. And, are you open to that? And if you have any fears around it, why don't you tell me what those things are? Like if you're afraid you can't commit a lot of time, or you need more time alone because you're feeling depressed, whatever those things might be, let's just have a communication about them and see if, those are solvable problems and that we can both feel good about proceeding, or if they're not solvable problems. And then I want to know clearly so that, I can have situations in life that are fair to my needs as well. So basically, that's my long version. You can shorten that. You can take what you want from that. I always try to over-explain the scripts of communication kind of things. So you can pick and choose. But you want to have those key points. And what you want to avoid doing at all costs is going, oh, he's depressed, which means I can't have needs. And we want to go, he's depressed, so let me ask him more about his needs. Let me understand his needs more. Let me also share mine more. And let's have a really open, honest conversation. And anything that goes, mutually exclusive in needs will only create resentment in one other person that will then be bottled up, then explode at some point. And then this person's going to feel really bad, right? Who's already feeling down. And then they're going to tell stories. And then we get into really problematic and sometimes dysfunctional territory. So it's extremely important to be really clear and to not justify people's pain to make us not have needs. And I've seen that. I've gone through that, had to learn that firsthand as a person. And that's actually what creates healthier dynamics. And believe it or not, that's most often what actually helps other people to come out of their own funks, because they actually start communicating their needs. They see your example and they go, okay, I can talk about my stuff too. And they share their fears. And if you can create a supportive environment for both parties, it's actually like a bit of a game changer in relationships. So excellent questions. And hopefully that's very helpful for you. So Nicole D, hello and welcome. So Nicole says, I am an AA and my boyfriend is an FA. We recently split up over something stupid. Should I do the no contact and look to speak to him in 30 days? It's been 1 week so far. Those are tough ones with FAs too, because sometimes they get emotional and they kind of lash out, and then they can push away, and then, it can lead to a split up. So I was just scrolling down to see if there was a second part of your question, but I don't think so. Okay, so should I do the no contact and look to speak to him in 30 days? You can. Okay, I'll give you the different options. Option number 1, the FA, when they do that, they're usually deactivated. I'll tell you this really interesting thing. FAs, when they're doing that, are usually deactivating. And then a lot of FAs, it's very common that they go like this. They go, I'm deactivating. They don't think that, but they're deactivated. They're mad. And then they kind of lean in their anxious side a little bit after they, especially if they were the one doing the pushing away, which I bet they were in the situation, because it's very common for FAs to do that. And then they pull back, and then they think, if Nicole cares about me, she'll reach out to me. If so-and-so. So not when they're actually breaking up, like this has been a thought out decision. This is, I'm talking about like breaking up because of a fight. Like you guys got in a spat, you had an argument, and then the person's like, I don't want to do this anymore. So usually what then happens is then the FA kind of like tests by staying silent, and they push away to stay silent. And then they often go, well, you're not reaching out, so you don't care enough. And then they deactivate over that specific dynamic. So we have to take into consideration a few things. Thing number one, in that case, 30 days actually might cause more long-term deactivation. But it's good to go no contact for a little bit. I just really wouldn't go no contact for more than like 10, 12 days. Like I would go 10 days and then maybe reach out by like day 11 or 12. Beyond that, you're probably going to get like deactivation round 2, because the FA is going to feel rejected that you didn't reach out, assuming that you should reach out, because, all the stories that they have going on, they can be very identified with. But here's the really important part to take into consideration. You have to make sure that you're being fair to yourself, because it sounds to me like you might be dating somebody who's got a lot of really intensive trauma patterns still, who's doing a lot of the push-pull, who's ending an entire relationship based on something small, who probably, if they're ending an entire relationship based on something small, has a net negative of communicating their needs and being okay to be vulnerable. And when we look at why people break up over small things, there's always one reason. It's they aren't getting their needs met in the relationship historically first. They aren't communicating what those needs are, so the other person doesn't know. And then what's happening is this person who's doing the breaking up over something small, they feel like their needs aren't getting met from a relationship, which is a huge part of how we get into relationships and why we get into relationships from the subconscious perspective in the first place. They also feel unseen and unheard by their partner because the partner's not meeting their needs, not because their partner's not trying or doesn't want to, but because the partner is not a mind reader and can't know the exact specific needs the person always has. And then they tell stories around it that split them off so that the partner is now the enemy in their mind, right? When they're triggered. And so now it's really easy to break up over something small, because there's this whole entire backstory that's been happening first, or this entire subconscious paradigm that's been built out by this person. And so this is why we get into these situations to begin with. So, if you want to do the no contact and then bring the person back and have a different, and start the relationship over, it has to come with specific things that also mitigate the root problems, the reasons you ended up splitting up over something stupid in the first place. So you can do the no contact thing. If you split up because of a fight, don't do the 30 days. You'll get like deactivation round 2. Do like 12 days, 10, honestly, like 10 days. I'd go 3 more days. And then I would say, Happy New Year. How are you? And open the dialogue, start things back up, and then have a conversation. And don't just do it all at once. But if you start talking again, then you meet up or you spend time together, or you're on the phone and you have a vulnerable conversation, whatever it might be. What you really want to get out of that is then being able to say, hey, these are some things that I'm afraid are happening in the relationship that actually led up to that in the first place. I'm afraid you're not telling me what you need sometimes and not being vulnerable and opening up enough. And so while I can try to meet your needs, I also am not going to be perfect at it because I can't read your mind. And I'm afraid that you don't feel okay to speak up about when you feel afraid or hurt or jealous or concerned and I want you to feel like you're safe to do that. And I want us to both be able to do that. And so you want to change the underlying patterns that are the root problem of this surface symptom split up over something small, so that you're addressing the whole paradigm there, if that makes sense. And so that will be an important conversation to have, and pretty much a non-negotiable to making it work, is how I would set it up in my mind and the way I look at it. So hopefully that makes lots of sense as well. Okay, so the next question is Grace. Hello, Grace. How are you this evening? So Grace says, hi, Thais. I hope you had a lovely holiday break. I wanted to ask you something I've been struggling with for a while. Since my breakup with my partner around 4 months ago, I have been feeling incredibly lonely. I know that a lot of my issues are to do with a lack of emotional connection. Now that I'm out of the relationship, I see excellent. You guys are bringing up such important points. Okay. I now see that I relied solely on my partner for emotional connection and my validation and worth. So now I feel totally lost. I have friends, but my relationship was very secretive. And so I haven't been able to share this with a lot of them. Interesting. I'm thinking this might be why I find it hard to emotionally connect with others. The option isn't really there to discuss my relationship with them because it doesn't feel right. And it was a really difficult and complicated relationship. How do I meet this need without having to delve into talking about the deeper part of myself? How do I also meet emotional connection in other ways? Thank you once again for being a light when my world has recently been feeling dark. That's so sweet. And I'm so happy we can be here to support you, Grace. Okay. Well, I will tell you, you hit the nail on the head for all the problems that are causing, all the root causes of the problem is what I'm trying to say to begin with. So let's take a look. Number one, and you can almost get a pen and paper because I'm going to say a lot in here in this breakdown. So number one, when we exclusively rely on one major person, maybe a couple other people in very small doses, but when like the center of our world revolves around one person and then that person exits our life, we're going to feel extremely lonely. Okay. Especially if that is combined with a high personality need around emotional connection, right? Because now we have this huge bucket. This person was filling the bucket and all of a sudden the water, the tap is turned off. And now we're like, but my bucket, right? And we're used to this stuff. So right there, you have a recipe for really important stuff. So out of here, what I would extract from there as point number one, and you asked some really great questions, like you're really on track. But as point number one here, why, what in me, what beliefs do I have? What stories do I have? What patterns do I have in the ways that I've historically gotten my needs met or had my needs met that lead me to get my emotional connection met really only from relationships or really only from this romantic relationship? Like what in me keeps craving that, keeps going to that as the high, like, why is there not more balance? Is it, and I'm going to tell you a few reasons that I think exist here. Is it, number one, I'm not vulnerable enough with my friends. Okay, I hear that that's a big piece. If I believe in any way, if I have a belief pattern that says you can't be vulnerable with friends, if I have a pattern in my past or history where I felt bullied by friends as a kid, excluded or hurt by friends, betrayed by friends, anything in those like realms, it's very common that then the mind would develop beliefs that say, I don't want to be vulnerable in friendships. Then I keep a distance from them, and then they can only ever fill my big bucket this much because of my operating system and how I receive connection. And the largest part of what emotional connection is vulnerability between two parties. That's what emotional connection is. It's, hey, I'm going to share with you my internal world and you can share yours. And if I'm only doing that in a romantic situation and not with friendships, then I'm keeping that bucket on empty, right? Or fairly empty. And then loneliness is going to be a very prevalent feedback mechanism that we feel when our needs are not being met, specifically when those needs are emotional connection. Okay. So you see the whole paradigm so far, right? So once you have those beliefs, okay, or fears about friends, things like that, then you ask so number one, do I have any beliefs in general that are blocking me? Do I believe that friends won't meet your needs at all, or I can't trust friendships, or friendships will bully me, or friendships will exclude me, or I don't fit in, or like whatever stories we have? I'm just giving you a list of common ones, and you want to work on reprogramming those stories so that you're removing the barrier so that your faucet can pour into your bucket again, right? From people other than your romantic relationship. So that's a really important part in there. Now the next one I now see that I have relied solely on my partner. You really hit the nail on the head in a lot of ways. And then the secretive part. So like at the end of the day, that can be a boundary. You don't have to talk to your friends about it. But what I will tell you that will be your fastest route to getting out of the loneliness feeling is to have an honest conversation with somebody about the relationship first. It's going to be a big barrier because you feel like this huge, imagine, right? Like imagine we have this huge, imagine, somebody makes, let's say Bob makes a career change. He has this job he loves, and then he loses that job. And now, he has to go find a new job, and his whole world feels like it's been shaken up a little bit. And this huge part of his identity and how he got his needs met and how he, showed up on a regular day, all these things are being stripped from him. And then he can't talk to anybody about it. That's a lonely way to live, right? And so he can go about other things and he can say, it's fine. I'm still not going to tell anybody about my job. And, about losing my job, and I can still try to talk to people and connect in other ways. And that's true. But if that's your reality, and if part of emotional connection is based on vulnerability, you're still going to keep yourself a little bit lonely, to be quite honest. So you could do a couple things. You could meet friends in the school. You can meet friends in other places online, wherever it might be, where like you feel like you would be more comfortable sharing. Maybe not in your like community. If you just have a hard stop there, that's fine. And because I at the end of the day, that's your boundary and you get to choose that. Or if you're like, you know what, I really see that me not sharing this huge part of my world is acting as this massive barrier to emotional connection, I'm going to use a bit of a drip method. Like I'm just going to use a little bit of exposure response very slowly over time and try being vulnerable and sharing a little bit with one friend at a time. And for whatever reasons I'm not sharing the relationship, I'm just going to over explain so I can be understood. Let's pretend that you're in a relationship and you feel like for whatever reason it shouldn't have been the relation, you wanted to be secretive because of XYZ. And I have some ideas of why that might be that I've commonly seen over time. I won't mention them just out of respect to whatever your boundaries might be. But there's common reasons that people don't like sharing a relationship. And there's, 4 or 5 major ones. It could be something else too. But if you have one of those things, those major, reasons, you might say to a friend, like really where you were coming from when the relationship started and what you were going through and why you decided anyways to be with that person and why you kept it a secret and what you were afraid of, and just be vulnerable so the person sees you as that human being that you are and can empathize with you and can go, yeah, I see why you fell into that situation. I get it. I understand. And to have that absence of judgment and to be able to have that conversation will fill that bucket right up. So those are some options. Again, they're options. You don't have to do one or the other. Now, the next thing here is, how do I meet this need without having to delve into talking? Be vulnerable about other things in your life in other ways. Be vulnerable about everything in your life from this moment forward. Be vulnerable in a way that still respects the boundary. You could say, I'm just getting out of this relationship for personal reasons. I really don't want to talk about the details of it. But it's been tough on me. And I ask that you respect my boundary, but here's what I'm feeling and here's what I'm going through and XYZ. So you can do all these different things, right? Or you can just be vulnerable about your personal growth journey and the things you're working on and the things you're healing and how you're feeling with family or for other friends or some of the day-to-day things you're going through. But the more vulnerability you have, loneliness is about the quality of our connections. And that in the loneliness course, there's like tremendous detail on this, but literally like research has conclusively proven people can have, it doesn't matter how many friends people have. If the quality of those friendships is poor because they're missing vulnerability from both parties, they're missing trust, they're missing like sharing, they're missing having their personality needs engaged, then we're going to feel lonely even if we have all the friends in the world. And so you want to break that pattern from there as well. And I think I answered everything. I know that was a long answer, but great question. And thank you for sharing vulnerably with us in here. Okay, so let's see the next one. Shavan, how are you? Welcome. Shavan, maybe. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. It's a really beautiful name. Hi, Thais. I'm FAA, partners FADA. FAA, partners FADA. Wow. Married 6 years. What's the best way to inform you've made the decision to leave the relationship within X amount of time if things don't improve? Okay, excellent. So here's what I would say. those are tough relationships. They're like fireworks when you first meet because both people are FA. They can be so present, so consistent, so loving and caring. But then there can be all these other things that pop up and arise, right? So here's what I will say. Number one, set a deadline internally first. Get really clear about your boundaries. Like what is not working for me specifically, right? Because I want to show you something. I used to see this all the time in my practice where I'd see couples and it would be like they would come in and one person would say, I need to feel more loved in the relationship. And another person would say, okay, I'll make you feel more loved this week. And it'd be, and then they'd go and they come back the next week and the person would say, my partner didn't make me feel more loved at all. And meanwhile, they wanted love through acts of service, through somebody doing the dishes, somebody taking out the garbage. That's how they wanted love to be communicated to them. And their partner, who heard them say, I want to be more loved, was loving them through physical affection and being more touchy-feely. And the person's like, you're missing the mark. You're not meeting my needs. You don't care. And so what we have to really be able to do and to recognize is that we have to really define what we need to improve. If we go, things need to improve, the person might go, okay, like I'll do X, Y, and Z. We want to get specific. Like, what are the top 3 things that you want to improve in the relationship? And we don't want to come across as threatening when we do this. If we're really going to see this out and we're really going to try to like set a deadline and pour our heart in and try to make it work. And then if we get to that, let's say 3-month deadline or 6-month deadline, and we go, nothing's changed. I have to respect my boundaries now. And at least I can walk away regret-free, knowing I poured everything I could into this, was clear, was specific, did communicate, all this stuff. So number one, get clear what needs to improve and what does that look like? How can you paint the picture of what that looks like? So don't just say our communication needs to improve. Say our communication needs to improve because we're not present with each other enough. Like I really want us to have a morning routine or an evening routine where we just put the phone away, television off, and we just talk for 15 minutes over coffee or tea, and we just connect. Like, so don't just say communication, get specific, paint the picture. We've got the morning routine, we're sitting, we're present, we're looking at each other, we're talking, we're asking questions, get really specific. Pick your top 3 things and say, these are the 3 things I need to improve. And then instead of saying, if they don't work, I'm leaving, say, I'm having a hard time seeing how this can keep working on the path that it is. Start there. If you're going to do this like internal deadline, don't come across and say, you have 3 months or else, right? FAs especially don't tend to respond that well to that. So we say these things. And then the second thing I would do, Siobhan, is I would go, why don't we do these things? What are we afraid of? Or what are the barriers we have? Are we too busy all the time? Do we not get taught good communication habits growing up? Are we carrying resentment that we need to work on so we can be present and vulnerable with each other again? Are there things you need me to hear? We want to open up and find out why. And then we want to create a strategy for those things and how to improve upon them. So now you kind of have these 3 steps. They're set out. You're clear. You're specific. You know that the person you're trying to talk to actually knows what you're saying and understands you because you've done such a good job of explaining it. And we're not just like going to leave a 6-year marriage because we didn't say communication looks like being present. And so, our partner's texting us more often thinking that that's communicating, but really we needed the face-to-face stuff. So get really clear, really specific, find out what the barriers are, like why this hasn't been happening, and then create a strategy or solution for how to move through this. And then you have a really good deadline. And then you can look at that end of that X amount of time and you can say, I did everything. And if I did all the things I needed to do, I said all the things I needed to say, I was clear, I was specific, I poured my heart in, I did the work, I worked to change, I heard their needs too, and things didn't improve, then I know the person's probably not going to change anytime soon, if at all. And they're not ready to be in a relationship of the quality that is important and preferable for me. So if I want to honor myself as a human being, then I have no choice but to leave. And then you're clear and the exit is much easier as well. So it's kind of a win-win, right? You either work it out and it's great, or you're really clear, it cannot work, and then you're not left in any gray area. So hopefully that makes a lot of sense and great question. Okay, so Jen S., how are you today? So Jen says, hi, Thais. I've been working to become less emotionally dependent upon my best friend, focusing upon self-soothing, communicating needs, wounds, and stories associated with our friendship. However, unfortunately, lately, due to her own mental health, she has very little emotional bandwidth for the last few months. I find myself at the moment becoming overwhelmed. Where we would have connected most nights in depth, unfortunately, she is now able for almost no connecting for most of the week. The inconsistency combined with significant reduction of connection is challenging. Good. I have two big needs that are missing. I hear certainty. Consistency is related to certainty. And I hear emotional connection, right? Related to love and connection, and it's 6 basic human needs. So I hear that two, I bet you, Jen, even just from like what reading your question, I bet those are 2 of your highest needs as a person. I bet she was a big source, kind of like how Grace was sharing. Sometimes we can really hone in on like one major person as being this huge source. And then when that's taken away, it feels like our world's crumbling down because we identify our sense of self through our personality needs. When our personality needs are taken away, it feels like our identity is taken away. It feels like who we are. Our personality needs are our subconscious identity. It feels like that's taken away. And that can feel like very shell shocking, right? So I have taken some space completely from my phone, apart from a couple of days a week. And I've gone back to work on my beliefs, some of which I may have missed. Any more help would be amazing. Excellent. It sounds like you're doing a really good job on your stories. Because you sound like you're in pain, not suffering. Suffering would be like, I'm angry, I'm upset. You sound, hey, I'm hurt. I'm in this place right now. You can write, what's any meaning I'm giving this about myself? I'm not worthy. I'm not a good friend. She doesn't care about me. Whatever stories are there, take a look. And then, make sure you're equilibrating them in the situation specific context. Okay. How does she care about me? And then how am I a cared about person? Who else cares about me as a whole? So you do both. And then what you really want to do in here as well is stories associated. Yeah. So then you want to go, okay, what are my other ways of meeting my needs? So how can I get more certainty in my life overall? Because maybe this person was a source of certainty in their consistency, how often we would speak in the friendship, these sorts of things. So how can I get more certainty as a whole? Okay. What would that look like for me? And these are usually things like making a schedule for my life, making more structure in my life, having a routine, having a plan for the next, a 5-year vision that I can focus on. We get a lot of our sense of self-identity from a 5-year vision, from a 10-year vision, because we don't like go find our purpose in life. We define our purpose in life through self-exploration, understanding our personality needs, our morals, our values, the things that are important to us as people, our skill set, getting clear about our internal reality, and then looking at our whole internal reality from that conscious perspective, looking down into our subconscious mind and going, okay, I see what I'm working with here. And now from here, I'm going to create and define a purpose. I'm going to create and define what I want to do with all of this. And usually when we have that, we also feel less lonely and less often because we have that focus of like who we are and what we want to put our time and energy towards. And there's something to move towards all the time instead of feeling like we're floating. Then we lean around on other people. We want both. We want to lean around on other people. We want to have interdependency, but we want to also have that strong sense of self. So I kind of went on a tangent there, but certainty, that 5-10-year vision, schedule, structure, order, a plan, writing out the schedule for your day, checking off your to-do list. What are your next moves in your career? Where are the next, what's your financial budget and plan? All the things that create certainty from a holistic perspective. Then we can go into the emotional connection part. And, where will I get these needs met? It sounds like you're doing a great job of meeting some of them for yourself. But if she was this big part of your life, there's still going to be this void a little bit, right? It's normal. And so then it's going to be, can I communicate my needs to her? Have I said, hey, I know you're going through a hard time, but I would really love if we can just have a consistent phone call on Tuesdays and Fridays for an hour. Would you be okay with that? Like, that would be great for me. If you can't make it the day of, no problem, let me know. But if we can have something in, as a plan to stay in touch, that would be awesome. What can I do to support you as a friend? What do you need? And making sure that there's a needs dialogue that's 2 ways, right? And then I would say lastly that as you go through and you have these conversations, and you open these doors up kind of thing, then you can also ask yourself, well, maybe I should meet other friends. Maybe I should set the intention to make an effort with other people in my life, to talk to other people. You meet more people in the PDS community, go to more of the socials, have things that fill that bucket for emotional connection, because I think this is a needs related topic more than anything else. So great question. And hopefully that makes a lot of sense and helps out a lot. Okay, so Zaheen, how are you? Welcome. I think this might be one of your first comments in here as well. So Zaheen says, hi Thais, as an FA, how do we learn to follow our intuition, question the meanings we give to what we observe without gaslighting ourselves and ignoring the red flags? Okay, so here's exactly how you're going to know the difference. Number one, we always question our stories and we always look to equilibrate them, okay? Why? Because here's what happens when we tell a story, okay? The story is not about what the person's doing. The need is about what the person's doing. And this is going to make a lot of sense in a second. The story is the horrible thing we tell about ourselves because of someone else's actions. So, for example, Bob didn't call me back, and I make that mean I'm unlovable, right? Now, that's gaslighting ourselves. That's what gaslighting ourselves is when we go, somebody's actions, based on all their own programming, based on all these things, I have no idea about them, I'm going to make that define my reality, right? Somebody's actions, Bob doesn't call me back, and I make that mean I'm an unlovable human. That's a huge injustice in the relationship to ourselves. So we stop making people or experiences or external things that happen in our lives define our character at our core. And so we first question the story so that we throw that garbage out of the window, okay? Then we go, what do we need? Now, the need is the opposite of any gaslighting that could possibly exist. The need is us tuning into ourselves and going, what do I need to feel better? And then we go, and what's my strategy to get that need met? And so let's say we go, I need to communicate with Bob, that I need him to talk to me. Then if let's say Bob goes, I did call you. And you're like, but I have no missed calls and you constantly don't call me and I have no voicemails and I have no, anything. Then we know what our need is. I need to feel nurtured. I need to feel cared for by Bob. Then I can go communicate the need. And if I see that the other person is not able to meet the need, because they keep gaslighting or they don't do the call back, we've communicated, they still don't call us, whatever it might be. Then I go, well, then I need to feel cared about in my relationships. If I can't meet it in a context specific, I just take a step back and I meet it in the holistic perspective of my life. So who else makes me feel cared about? Or where will I find people who are more likely to be caring, who are more likely to be loving and compassionate? What friends can I rely on? All these different things. So we tune into ourselves and we follow what we want and that intuitive part of ourselves when we really ask ourselves what our needs are. But when we're first telling ourselves a story that we're an unlovable person because someone didn't call us back, when we're letting someone else's actions define the story of ourselves and our character and who we are, then it's really hard to figure out what our needs is because we think, I just need love from anybody to prove that I'm unlovable, and we'll keep seeking outside of us, maybe from unhealthy sources because we're desperate. But as we equilibrate the story first, actually what's underneath that is going to be much more in alignment with our intuition. And then we can ask ourselves, okay, great, what are our needs? How can we get those needs met? And if someone's unable to meet them, we pivot and we get them met from somewhere else, or more so from the relationship to ourselves. And so these are really important steps to follow. Sorry, I thought that was the end of your question. So then the next part of your question is, I'm FA, my wounds of being unheard activates when my DA partner dismisses me and says, don't start this with me again. I don't want to hear it. I feel gaslighted and become stuck. How can I overcome this? Excellent. So we're going to do a live example here. So my DA partner dismisses me. So the story, what do you make the dismissal mean? Do you make the dismissal mean that I'm unlovable, I'm not good enough, I'm unworthy? If I was better, I would get the attention. If I was, so we first check in there. Are we telling any painful stories about the event, about ourselves, because of the event? And we have to make sure we pluck those out and don't leave any room for stuff like that. And then what do I need in this situation? Well, I need to feel heard. I need to feel cared about. I need to feel seen. Great. What's my strategy to overcome this? To define, hey, it's really important for me in a relationship to feel seen, to feel nurtured, to feel heard, to feel cared about. And maybe I communicate it in a positive way and I give some examples and I communicate it frequently and see my needs through. Maybe I ask him, hey, what would help you hear me? Like, I notice that sometimes you shut off and maybe there's something going on inside of you when maybe you're afraid of, feeling criticized, whatever it might be, but like, how can we work on this together? And if you do all these things and you try these strategies and then the person's still not able to do it and the person's still saying, don't start with me, I don't want to hear anything you have to say, well, then we're probably not in the right relationship, because relationships require communication in order for them to function. And if somebody's cutting off the line of communication, despite our requests, despite us speaking up, all these different things, then we get really stuck. And I see why you would feel stuck. So do that work to meet your need first. Make sure you don't give any personal meaning about who you are because of that person's actions. And then if you see that there's no movement despite all the communication, then you might have to pivot and say, maybe I am not in the right relationship, and maybe think about moving in a different direction. So those are the steps that I would follow. And thank you for sharing that example, because hopefully that's a really good live example for other people in terms of like how that emotional processing tool really works. Equilibrating stories first, and then meeting your needs second. So let's see. The next question I see is Giovanna. Hello, how are you? Did I miss anything else? No. Okay. So Meredith, hello and welcome. Yay, it worked. Let's see. Okay, Jake. Hi, Jake. How are you? Okay, so Jake says, as we are more conscious of our subconscious programs, does this percentage shift into more conscious awareness? Or is it that we just have placed programs to bring more of the subconscious? Is a great question. To bring more of the subconscious. Oh, is that the end of the question? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Great question. So what ends up happening is we start to make those things part of our conscious reality more as they get programmed to be there, right? So as we have repetition plus emotion, like we will naturally know, for example, like, oh, I would feel helpless in this situation, or I would, X, Y, and Z. But as we do the equilibration work over time, you'll also find that those things kind of get like control alt deleted out of your brain. So the emotional charge that was there, a lot of times, I'm just speaking for myself here. A lot of times I've had the experience of being like, oh my gosh, this situation 5 years, 10 years ago, whatever, would have made me feel so trapped or so afraid, but able to see it and be like, that's not there for me anymore, although I know how this would have made me feel. Or, so a lot of the programs will be like reprogrammed literally. And like when we look at like neuroplasticity, for example, neural pathways, they atrophy like muscles. So if we were working out our one bicep every day for 100 days, for 2 hours every day, just our one bicep, we have this really intense, like, muscle there. But then if we were to just stop, it takes a little bit, right? But that muscle goes away over time and it atrophies. But if we then actively work out this bicep, for the 2 hours every day, and we want this bicep to get to this biceps point, so we have like equal, we have balance in our muscles. Then when we build this up, we become more reliant on this, and then we have this like nice homeostasis with our arm muscles, right? So you can think of it as being kind of like we get into this position where we can go, this situation could be about me not being good enough. Let me look at it. Is there anything I can improve? Is there anything I can take away? Okay, maybe this and this, but I'm not telling the story that I'm like a not good enough human being at my core because that example, let's say, if the person didn't call me back. So then we get into a fair and balanced thinking, just like our arms would be fair and balanced, right? So we can look at both sides from a conscious perspective and observe without emotionally buying in. And then on top of that, so to answer your question, it's kind of both, right? So some of these things we just become conscious about. Some of them we actually kind of equilibrate out and delete out in a way. They're no longer a part of our perceptual lens of the world. And then also, Another thing is that we can start, like, I think the second part of your question, does this percentage shift into more, or is it that we just place more of these programs to bring more of the subconscious conscious? Yes. So we can also, and this is a really great thing I recommend everybody does, practice programming your own mind to see your emotions as feedback mechanisms. So as soon as you feel bad, instead of just acting on it or repressing it or yelling or running away or sending a mean text or whatever we do, when we're feeling not good, install the program that says, the moment I feel bad, I'm like, what's my emotion and why am I feeling this way? Because emotions, that's what they are. They're just feedback mechanisms 100% of the time, either telling you have painful stories you're running or you have unmet needs. And we can go, I don't feel good. What stories do I have? What unmet needs do I have? And we can go through that. Then we are programming our emotions to actually actively bring more of the programs from the subconscious into the conscious mind in a really quick period of time. And that's the point. That's why we do this stuff in the first place. That's how we heal, we grow, we get, we feel good all the time. And that's how we get really good at regulating. So great question. Very insightful, thoughtful question. Okay, so let's see who's next. Preston, hi, how are you? Okay, so Preston says, hi, Thais, thank you for all you do for us. Thank you so much for saying that. I asked X about intentions and shared I was confused given the space I had created, his inconsistencies, and his initiation after 7 weeks no contact. He apologized and said he had none and was only being friendly as he was worried for me. I thanked, complimented his honesty, friendliness, and said, you are lovely. Oh my gosh, I asked for clarity and if a friendship is what he was looking for. Wow, this is amazing. And if a friendship is what he was looking for, we could discuss, but he made it clear we were not friends. He agreed, but made it clear we were not friends. He agreed. Said when ready, he would hopefully let me know. He said he likes to check in here and there because he still cares. Check in on me here and there because he still cares. I did not entertain the conversation further as I thought I was setting a boundary, but realized I yet again left an open door. 5 weeks later, no contact. I get a Merry Christmas. Interesting. I responded in kind. 4 hours later, no emoji. When is the appropriate time to set a more direct boundary? Is this a matter of self-worth or fear of reconnection? Should I even entertain this? What is going on with him? I don't see any point if he has no intentions. Good. Or is this some kind of Mac magic DA FA stuff since me starting distance and moving on? Okay, this is an amazing question. So let me just say a couple things. Number one, as a recovering fearful avoidant, that's huge. I mean, that's a really vulnerable conversation to have, especially with like somebody in that dynamic. And I know, like, I think you guys work together, if I remember correctly, and like, you kind of see him around sometimes and there's kind of this like funny thing. It might be different now that if a lot of people are working from home and stuff, but that's a really vulnerable conversation. And I just, like we talked about with whose question was it at the beginning? I forget whose question it was now, but somebody was saying, was it Isha? I think it was Isha, that they realized their needs, right? They were going, well, I know what I want, I know what I need. And they went from the outside or the inside out. And this is another example of that, right? You're like, I'm going to have the conversation because I need that clarity. I don't care what the outcome is. I'm going to, irrespective of what he thinks or feels about it, I'm going to choose to have that conversation for me. So I just want to acknowledge that because that's really amazing. And then I think it sounds like the conversation went really well overall. I wouldn't say that, oh, you left the door open and you made a mistake. Like, you can't really know everything that's going to happen in a conversation. It's okay. It's okay to realize after I left the door open. Now, what I think is really important is that you say, I don't see the point if he has no intentions. And then is this some black magic? Oh, I thought I said magic. My cursor was over the word. DA stuff, FA stuff, since me starting distance and moving on. It's possible that he's feeling a little bit of a loss and that he's, wanting to connect and wanting to show up. It's possible he's feeling a little bit lonely, that he misses you. Yeah, all of that's there. But at the end of the day, Preston, remember, it's always like for DA and FAs, it's their feelings minus their fears. And if his feelings are here and his fears are here, you're only getting this much of an output from a person, right? And that's probably not worth it for you. So, and you have to ask, like, am I okay with 1 out of 10 of, maybe his feelings are a 6, maybe his fears are a 5.5. So maybe I'm getting 0.5%, whatever it might be, 5%, or I'm not very good at mental math, 0.5% of, no, it's still whatever the percentage is. Maybe I'm just getting this very small output of effort from this person. And am I okay with that, right? 5% of effort from this person, does that feel good for me? Like, and so you can get really clear on what your boundaries are, and assuming that I haven't seen enough from him. Saying Merry Christmas definitely isn't like enough for me to be like, oh, he's reconsidering the relationship. He wants to make it work. You've put yourself out there. You've had a vulnerable conversation. He said, I care. I still care about you as a person. I like to check in from time to time. So you get to decide in this moment, based on knowing that that's pretty much what he's probably doing, just checking in from time to time, as he said. Do I feel comfortable with that? Am I okay to have that kind of relationship with him? Or do I prefer just not being in contact at all? And if that's my preference, then I have to reinforce that boundary, right? And if I'm okay with him checking in from time to time, that's fine. But then I have to be really clear about my boundary, where I'm not going to give him more emotional time, thinking about him, feeling about him, wondering about him, than is necessary or required for somebody who's not even going to have a friendship with me, who's just going to have a check-in from time to time relationship with me. How much like real estate would I let that person have in my brain? And I'm going to stick to that amount of time. Like, if that was somebody in my life and they're just going to text, once every 3 months to say happy holidays or happy birthday or whatever's going on, whoever that is, if that's the only time I hear from them, I'm going to be like, thank you, you too. Bye. That's it, right? Like, you're not even, thank you, you too, and that's it. You're not even going to really open a dialogue. And then that should literally be the amount of real estate that person has, unless they do something differently. Unless they come around and say, I miss you, I want to try again, unless they change the trajectory of the relationship. And right now, ball is in that person's court for sure. So that's how I would approach it. That's how I would stick with it. And hopefully that makes a lot of sense. And great job on like having that conversation, doing that work, all of it. It's amazing. Okay, so let's see who's next. At the mouth of the river, how are you? Okay, so hey Thais, could you rank the attachment styles in terms of to least likely to be open to the possibility of rekindling with an ex, and explain reasons why for each? Yeah, it's a great question. Okay, so most likely to rekindle with an ex, anxious, preoccupied, obviously, right? Why? Because they cannot stand a breakup. They go through the most pain and suffering. And so the interesting part about anxious, preoccupied is they have huge needs wired for relationships, to the point of codependency often, which means they will not only, when they go through a breakup, like we've been talking about as sort of a theme this evening, their buckets are suddenly unfilled, right? So now they have this huge like loneliness feeling because they usually have emotional connection, certainty, like really high on their needs list. And then a relationship usually that's the primary source. So when our needs are unmet, our subconscious mind wants to go back to our needs in the fastest way possible, not the most effective way possible, not the best way possible, the fastest way. And so what often happens is, of course, we're going to see the AAs, and we're going to see that they go, oh my gosh, my needs aren't met, so we want that ex back. And then on top of that, they also have the wounds that are triggered. They want to get away from that pain. I've seen a lot of anxious, preoccupied people over the years, as a general rule, know that a relationship is not right for them and still go back just because they can't cope with the pain on their own. So we're assuming that the person's not doing work on themselves. They don't know core wounds. They don't know about attachment styles. Like, we're just talking from that perspective, okay? The next most likely would be securely attached people, because if they see, a relationship could work, if they see that a change is happening, they will look at it from like a more fair and balanced perspective. Like, let's say something doesn't work. Let's say the person comes back around. They say, you know what? I recognize what's going on with me. I recognize here's what I can do. Here's what I need from you. they're going to be more open from like a neutral perspective a lot of the time. They're not like, oh, I can't get back with an ex. Oh, I need to get back right now. I can't, so they're going to be next. Then I would say fearful avoidance, then dismissive avoidance. Fearful avoidance are third because they will feel a lot and they have that anxious side that can be triggered. They can, want that connection. But once they feel like violated, broken up with, rejected, abandoned, they start deactivating more intensely than they already were. And we know that FAs, as a general rule, can deactivate quite intensely. And fearful avoidance have a huge trust wound. And so, sometimes a breakup can feel like a violation of trust. I've heard fearful avoidance say many, many times, I would never get back together with an ex, but I see them get back together with exes lots. Okay. It's still like common enough that it's not like an uncommon pattern. I'd say it happens half and half as a general rule for FAs. Which that is obviously dependent on other circumstances, the ex, the situation, why they broke up, if the other person wants to be back together, etc. DAs the least, because DAs are the least likely to do anything after a breakup. They don't like chasing. It's too vulnerable. They don't like reaching back out. They don't like opening back up and being vulnerable again. These are all their core wounds. And then usually when somebody's already broken up with them, if they felt a really, a big pain from that, they also don't want to be in that situation again or enter into a relationship where they're going to feel unsafe because that, the relationship can end like it already has. And so they're the least likely. Doesn't mean they don't. It still happens a lot with DAs. It's just, I would say they're definitely the least or the most resistant as a general rule to all of that. And so knowing what the big wounds are that are triggered by the breakup, knowing that it's the abandonment, the aloneness, not good enough rejection for the AAs, knowing that secures can have any core wounds triggered, but usually their wounds are less intense and they have less of them. Knowing that fearful avoidance often have the trust as a big one, the feeling rejected as a big one, and that the DAs have like the unsafety, sometimes their own deep unconscious wound of abandonment. Knowing that those are some of the wounds, we can work to sort of sidestep those in the getting back together process, just as long as we make sure that when we do that, we honor the relationship to ourselves and our own needs at the same time. So hopefully that makes a lot of sense. What great questions these are, you guys. Okay, so Jermaine says, hello, Jermaine. Hi, Jais. Happy upcoming 2021 to you. Thank you so much. Yeah, happy upcoming 2021 to all you guys, because I guess I'll see you on the 2nd. Hopefully we all enter into like the best 2021 and lots of things start shifting in the new year. Jermaine says, can you explain the value of writing with a pen and paper over typing on a computer or even not writing at all? You suggest writing things out a lot, and I hate writing, but I've heard there's a spiritual, psychological component when writing by hand. Okay, so I used to know the statistic off by heart. I used to give presentations and say this at the beginning of workshops, but I can't remember what it is. I think it's 4x. It's like 3x or 4x. I will double check for you and confirm, but I think research shows that we remember information 3 times or 4 times better when we write by hand versus when we're typing. And I used to tell people that, like, take notes by hand when people are, when I used to do a lot of live workshops in person. And so there's that component. I personally, and I'm just sharing from personal experience, and you can sort of tune in because you know your needs and all that works so well, Jermaine. But I personally know that, like, I derive some kind of like emotional connection to myself out of writing by hand. Like, I journal every night before I go to bed. I like don't miss a night. It's like my ritual for myself. And I like really love that time. And there's something about it where it's like, you're more present with yourself, computers off, things are away, and you're kind of just being with yourself more. So between like the memory part, that like emotional intimacy component with self, those things, I think it's powerful. But what I would say at the end of the day, Jermaine, is like, if you are finding yourself not doing things because you just don't like writing, but you know that you're going to do them if you type them out. Like, do whatever you're going to do that works best for you to get the work done, to have the routine, to have the habit, to show up for yourself. And like, I know you're so, handy and great with like computer and design and all these different things. So if that's your system, go for that. Honor that, because at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is have the most positive emotional associations in relationship to the things that we're trying to do. So we want to have the most like good feelings about what it is that matters to us, right? So if we want to write a book, we want to feel good, empowered, inspired by it every day. Because if we start linking negative emotions to the things, because we have resistance, then we're less likely to do the work. So that's going to be the highest priority at the end of the day. And there's stats and there's things about writing by hand, but ultimately you tune in, you listen to yourself. And that's the best thing to do. So great question. That is fantastic. Okay, let's see. I'm going to answer 3 more questions. DA here who falls in love easily with good-looking, intelligent women. That's a very DA thing. Intelligent, right, is a big DA thing for sure, because you connect from the mental faculties of your mind. Liz, okay, I answered Liz's question. Okay, Lindsay. So I am going to answer, by the way, like 2 more questions, and then we'll wrap it for this evening, and then I'll see you guys on Saturday. So Lindsay says, my ex-DA's mother continues to reach out to me. I haven't spoken to him since the day, I remember that happening, since the day we broke up in July, but she continues to reach out to me. She sent me a housewarming gift and a Christmas gift. It's kind of strange. I think she originally messaged you and like added you on Instagram or followed you on Instagram, right? I miss my ex a ton, but I know it would never work. So I'm not quite sure why she continues to reach out to him. She had apologized for his behavior in the relationship and his inability to love me. Do you have any insight as to why she would continue to reach out to me? And also, why was my first thought when getting his mother's gift was to reach out to him and get him a card? Didn't even think to send his mother a gift. Side note, when we were together, he was out of state on Christmas and didn't even think to wish me a Merry Christmas. I think you're going to say my cursor just jumped. Okay, so it's really interesting. So number one, what I'm going to guess is that there's something where she either has had conversations with him and he's brought you up, but I wouldn't like read into that too much either. So it's either that and she's trying to do the work for him and get his needs met because she knows he won't be vulnerable. Or it could be something like, she is in a position where she is kind of trying to control him, and she thinks you're good for him, and she's kind of trying to control the situation so that she can feel like you can reconnect with him, and she's trying to like orchestrate that because she really liked you. You lined up with a lot of what she would want in a daughter-in-law, like who knows? But it's going to be something along those lines. At the end of the day, those things are like a little bit irrelevant, believe it or not. It's more going to be about when we are in this position, what do we need to feel okay? So what do you want as a boundary? And if you have a lot of curiosity, you can say, hey, you know what? I think it's so sweet you gave me a housewarming gift. It was so thoughtful. I really appreciated it. Honestly, it was like really nice getting to know you and being a part of like that family dynamic. But I find right now it's kind of confusing for me because it brings up the past and like I'm really trying to move on and heal, and it makes me feel a certain way. And I would really appreciate if you could see that and understand it and maybe respect my space a little bit more. Like if you feel uncomfortable, you do that. And when you say it that way, then what you'll see is that if she says, okay, but so-and-so, whatever his name might be, keeps talking about you, keeps bringing you up, and that's why kind of thing, then you have some context, right? So you can go through and you can know why it's happening. Okay, it's him not being vulnerable. So you can gather clarity by saying something like that, but make sure you're really clear on what your boundaries are in the situation as well. And then lastly, why is your instinct to reach out and get him a card? Because the subconscious mind associates people with people, right? So the subconscious mind will associate his mother with him. And then you feel like, oh, she gave me a card. And then you have these emotional associations towards them. And then it's an easier strategy to connect with those people, right? To connect with the people that we were closest to and had the most connection with as a whole. So hopefully that makes so much sense. So I would, just to be really clear, I would literally set a boundary, number one. And number two, I would also make sure that you, like if you need that boundary. And then number two, you can also bring up, sorry, I'm just seeing my cursor likes to jump around. And then you can also bring up like what you need from her in that situation. You can gain any extra clarity if you need it. And then you can decide like, okay, how do I want to proceed from here? If you notice that your subconscious mind is naturally like then trying to drag him back into the situation with you, it might be a signpost that unless he says something or does something, you literally need to keep that boundary and stick to it, because it sounds like she can be kind of interfering with your healing process as well. So I hope that makes sense. Grace, I see that you said I skipped over your question, but I think I saw it. My cursor just skipped down a little bit, and I don't think it's letting me go back to the top because they sometimes auto delete the comments. I noticed SM and Nathan posted a question, and those who I was going to next. But sometimes it auto deletes if there's a lot of chat. So I apologize for that. Today's been an interesting day on here. But I will look out for your guys' questions. If you post early for Saturday, post it early, Nathan and SM, and I'll look out for them and then I'll answer them Saturday, first thing. So I'm just going to answer the question I see at the top of the chat right now, which is Kim. Hello, Kim. So Kim says, hi, Thais, thanks for all you do. So here's an interesting story. Thank you. I learned Monday morning that I was exposed to COVID on Christmas Eve. Oh, joy. Yeah. So far, I'm asymptomatic, awaiting a test. Results in self-quarantining. And I've been dreading telling my boyfriend the news. He's been out of town since the 23rd. Want to know the stories FA have been telling myself? Yes, what are they? Hold on, is that the end of, okay, part 3. I've been telling myself that I am bad. Very common for FAs, extremely common, huge pervasive story for FAs as a whole. Let's see, I am bad, that I was irresponsible, careless, and selfish for putting myself in a situation where I might have gotten infected and thus might infect him. I felt guilt and shame, which I guess is typical of FAs like me, but I talked to him on the phone today. I told him my feelings and stories. He reassured me that he's not angry, doesn't blame me, and wants me to be well so we can see each other again. Relieved. So my lesson is that it was helpful to identify my stories, name my emotions, recognize my needs for connection and certainty, and then bring those needs to him constructively and calmly. It bleeding worked. Thank you. Okay, so I just want to go through this for a moment because this is really, really beautiful. Really beautiful and also really powerful, okay? So first and foremost, you are saying, okay, that you recognize your stories and then you went to the relationship first. In order for you to do that in a healthy way, you also had to be able to disidentify from them enough. You're not believing to your core that you're bad. You're like, I'm feeling this way. I'm not sure this is my experience. Let me communicate it. And when we get to this point where we can do exactly these things and we can share our stories and have that conversation, this is like the end point, like, you know, the mastery point we want to get to. We do this internal work first, then we follow exactly these things and we bring these things into the dynamics of our relationship second. So if I believe I'm super bad and, you know, I should feel so guilty, it's harder to go. But if I'm a little separated from them, it's more easy to go and say, this is what I'm feeling. I'm having a hard time getting out of this. I keep feeling bad. I keep feeling guilt and shame. And, you know, I'm really sorry. And then you're gonna get better because you're not, like, let's say we feel guilty and ashamed and then somebody says something we don't like, we might get really defensive. But if we're coming from like that truth of observing our stories, knowing our wounds, knowing what that story, what those meanings are that we give to the situation, then we can go and put it out nicely there. You are so much more likely to have positive feedback from that person. And so, like, excellent, excellent job. Of course it worked. And this is like the point we're trying to get to is people, these types of communications, this type of like, as a human being, I have this type of communication with people pretty much exclusively. If there's a problem, I go, hey, this is the story I have. If there's a story there, or I say, this is what I need. And like you doing that is like a level of mastery. So just like round of applause. That's so exciting. I'm so happy to hear that. Congratulations. Great work. And yeah, that is amazing. Great example for everybody on here as well. So that is it for this evening. A huge hello to everybody in here. I know we have so many people chatting and connecting and all this stuff, and I'm so grateful you're all here this evening. I see lots of faces in here who are new. Hello, Ray. Hello, Annette. And Gabriella, hello. And Ken, that was a wonderful story. And B. Caldwell, always bringing everybody together in here. And Danny, hello. A huge hello to everybody who's new. A huge shout out to everybody for the amazing community support that everybody gives to each other. Apologies to anybody whose questions got skipped because of a little bit of the craziness in here tonight. And I will look into, like, I know sometimes they take a long time to answer questions. And I think when I answer them really thoroughly, sometimes the comments auto delete after the 30 minutes or so. Somebody mentioned it was 15 minutes. So we're going to check into that, and I'll give you guys some updates about that on Saturday. But hopefully everybody learns a lot from these. I think everybody asks such great questions. It's probably hard not to learn because everybody is just really creating the content in here through their amazing questions. And yeah, thank you. I see some of the people talking in here about the professional cuddler. I had a client who did that once. It was very interesting to hear those stories. And yeah, hi to all these new faces, TJ and Yana, hello. Miranda, hello. And I guess that's it for this evening. I know it's kind of late. So I hope you all have an amazing evening. Thank you again so much for being here. Happy New Year to everybody. And I hope that everybody has an amazing next couple of days. And I will see you Saturday at 2 p.m. Eastern, and then a live Q&A at 3:30 p.m. Eastern as well. Have an amazing evening, guys. And thank you again for being such a wonderful, wonderful part of our community. And hi to Betty and Andrea and MK and some of these new faces in here as well. Bye, guys. Good night. Thank you. Bye.